Hidden deep in the Himalayas is a kingdom unlike almost anywhere else on Earth. In Bhutan, happiness shapes national policy. Forests are protected by the Constitution. Mysterious symbols cover traditional homes, and ancient customs survive in a rapidly modernizing world. This is the real Bhutan, a country filled with traditions and surprises most outsiders never expect to see. The paintings that shock first-time visitors to Bhutan. Imagine traveling through the peaceful countryside of Bhutan, surrounded by Himalayan mountains, ancient monasteries, and beautifully decorated traditional homes. Then, without warning, you notice something completely unexpected painted across the wall of a house. A giant phallic symbol, displayed openly for everyone to see. For many first-time visitors, it can be one of Bhutan's biggest cultural surprises. But here, these unusual paintings are not intended as obscene or provocative images. They belong to a centuries-old cultural tradition and are commonly associated with fertility, protection, and the belief in warding off negative forces. Bhutan's official tourism website even notes that traditional houses, particularly in western parts of the country, may be decorated with religious symbols or giant phallic images representing fertility. The tradition is strongly connected with Drukpa Kunli, a famous Buddhist master who lived from 1455 to 1570. Known as the Divine Madman, he became legendary for teaching Buddhist ideas through humor and unconventional behavior rather than following the formal style people might expect from a religious teacher. His legacy remains especially visible around Chimi Lakang, a Buddhist temple in the Punakha region associated with fertility blessings. According to Bhutan's official tourism materials, couples have traveled there seeking such blessings, making the site one of the country's most distinctive cultural landmarks. What may initially shock an outsider can represent protection, spirituality, humor, and tradition to a local community. And perhaps that is the first lesson Bhutan teaches its visitors. Before judging something by appearance, you have to understand the centuries of history behind it. The country that puts happiness at the center of development. What if a country decided that economic growth alone was not enough to measure progress? In Bhutan, this idea became one of the most famous national philosophies in the world. Gross national happiness, often called GNH. The concept was introduced by Bhutan's fourth king, Jigme Singye Wangchuck, in the early 1970s. Instead of focusing only on gross domestic product, Bhutan argued that true development should also consider the quality of people's lives, the strength of communities, cultural identity, environmental protection, and good governance. But gross national happiness does not mean that everyone in Bhutan is happy all the time. That is one of the biggest misunderstandings about the country. GNH is better understood as a framework for national development rather than a promise of permanent happiness. The philosophy is traditionally built around four major pillars: sustainable and equitable socioeconomic development, environmental conservation, preservation and promotion of culture, and good governance. Over time, Bhutan developed a more detailed measurement system covering 9 domains, including psychological well-being, health, education, living standards, time use, cultural diversity, community vitality, ecological resilience, and governance. And this philosophy is not simply a historical slogan. As of 2026, gross national happiness remains visible in Bhutan's official approach to development. In February 2026, Bhutan's Prime Minister, Tshering Tobgay, was scheduled to speak at the World Government Summit about the country's development approach through the lens of GNH and sustainable urban innovation. Perhaps that is what makes Bhutan's experiment so fascinating. It does not claim that money is unimportant. Instead, it asks a much bigger question. If an economy grows, but people lose their environment, culture, community, or quality of life along the way, can that really be called progress? A country where forests are protected by the Constitution. In many countries, forests are protected through environmental policies that can change when governments change. But Bhutan has taken the idea much further. Here, protecting the forest is written directly into the Constitution. Bhutan's constitution requires the country to maintain at least 60% of its total land under forest cover for all time. According to Bhutan's official tourism information, forests currently cover more than 70% of the country, making this small Himalayan kingdom one of the most heavily forested nations in Asia. This is especially remarkable when you consider Bhutan's geography. The country stretches from subtropical lowlands in the south to some of the highest mountain landscapes on Earth in the north. Across these dramatic elevations are forests, rivers, protected areas, and biological corridors that provide habitats for an extraordinary variety of wildlife. Bhutan is home to rare and threatened species, including Bengal tigers, snow leopards, red pandas, Asian elephants, and black-necked cranes. Conservation is not limited to isolated national parks. A network of biological corridors helps connect protected habitats, allowing wildlife to move between different parts of the country. But Bhutan's relationship with nature goes beyond environmental policy. Buddhist traditions have influenced attitudes toward living creatures and the natural world for generations, while forests also remain important to rural communities whose daily lives are closely connected to the land. Of course, protecting such an enormous natural landscape while creating jobs, building infrastructure, and developing the economy is not easy. Bhutan faces the same difficult question confronting many developing nations. How can a country modernize without destroying the environment that makes it unique? So far, Bhutan has chosen an unusually ambitious answer. Economic development can continue, but nature must remain part of the equation. Bhutan makes tourists pay to help protect the country. For decades, Bhutan has followed a tourism philosophy that is very different from the mass tourism model seen in many popular destinations. Instead of trying to attract the largest possible number of visitors, the Himalayan kingdom has focused on what it describes as a high-value, low-volume approach. And for many international travelers, that difference becomes obvious before they even arrive. As of 2026, most adult visitors who are required to pay Bhutan's Sustainable Development Fee, or SDF, are charged $100 per person. Per night. Children between the ages of 6 and 11 generally receive a 50% reduction, while children under 6 are exempt. Indian nationals are subject to a separate, lower SDF rate. This fee is not the same thing as paying for your hotel, food, transportation, or guide. Those travel expenses are separate. The SDF is a daily levy designed to support Bhutan's broader development priorities, including projects connected to sustainability and the country's long-term future. The system can make a trip to Bhutan significantly more expensive than visiting some neighboring destinations. But that is partly the point. Bhutan has long tried to avoid the environmental damage, overcrowding, and pressure on local communities that can come with uncontrolled mass tourism. The country's modern tourism story began in 1974, when Bhutan officially opened to international tourists. Since then, tourism has been carefully managed as the country attempts to generate economic benefits without sacrificing its cultural identity and natural environment. For travelers, this creates an unusual experience. Bhutan is not completely closed to the outside world, and tourists are certainly welcome. But the country is also making it clear that tourism should contribute something in return. Whether this model can remain successful in a changing global travel market is still an important question. But Bhutan's message is remarkably clear. More visitors do not automatically mean better tourism. The capital city, famous for traffic police instead of traffic lights. Imagine arriving in the capital of a country and discovering something strangely missing from its busiest streets: the familiar red, yellow, and green glow of traffic lights. Welcome to Thimphu, the capital and largest urban center of Bhutan. For years, Thimphu has been widely described as one of the world's few capital cities without conventional traffic lights. At one of the city's best-known central intersections, traffic has traditionally been directed by a police officer standing inside a decorative booth, using precise hand movements to guide cars through the crossing. The site has become an attraction in its own right. Visitors often stop nearby to watch the officer's almost theatrical gestures as vehicles move through the intersection. The booth itself reflects traditional Bhutanese architectural details, turning something as ordinary as traffic control into a scene that feels uniquely connected to the country's identity. There is even a popular story that traffic lights were once installed in Thimphu, but were removed because residents preferred human traffic officers. However, versions of this story vary, so it is better understood as part of the city's popular modern folklore rather than an unquestionable historical fact. What is certain is that Thimphu is changing rapidly. The city is home to more than 100,000 people and has experienced growing vehicle numbers, construction, and urban development. As Bhutan modernizes, managing congestion and road safety has become an increasingly serious challenge. This creates a fascinating contrast. On one side is the image travelers love: a uniformed officer directing traffic by hand in the heart of a Himalayan capital. On the other is a growing modern city facing many of the same transportation problems found elsewhere in the world. Perhaps that is why this simple intersection represents Bhutan so perfectly. Traditional clothing is still part of everyday life. Walk through the streets of Bhutan, enter a government office, or visit a school, and you may notice something remarkable. Traditional clothing here is not simply a costume reserved for festivals, museums, or special performances. For many Bhutanese people, it remains a visible part of everyday life. The traditional national dress for men is called the go, a knee-length robe tied at the waist with a cloth belt known as a kera. Women traditionally wear the kira, a long woven garment typically combined with a jacket called a toego, and a blouse known as a wonju. These clothes create one of the most recognizable images of Bhutan, but their importance goes far beyond appearance. Bhutan has long promoted national dress as part of preserving its cultural identity. Traditional clothing is commonly worn in schools, government institutions, offices, religious sites, and during formal occasions. Depending on the setting, national dress may be expected or required, while modern Western-style clothing is also widely seen during everyday private life. What makes this especially interesting is the contrast with Bhutan's younger generation. Young Bhutanese people live in a world of smartphones, social media, international entertainment, and global fashion trends. In the streets of Thimphu, modern jackets and sneakers exist alongside beautifully woven gos and kiras. Rather than completely replacing one another, the old and the new often appear side by side. Bhutanese textiles themselves are also an important cultural tradition. Different regions are known for distinctive weaving techniques, patterns, and materials, and creating elaborate hand-woven fabrics can require considerable skill and time. For visitors, seeing traditional clothing in daily settings can feel like stepping into another era. But Bhutan is not simply trying to recreate the past. Instead, the national dress represents a much larger challenge facing this small Himalayan kingdom: how to participate in an increasingly connected world without allowing globalization to erase its cultural identity. Bhutan's national sport is nothing like an ordinary game. In most countries, watching a sports competition means sitting in a stadium while athletes compete under strict rules. But in Bhutan, the national sport of archery can feel like something much bigger than a game. Known locally as DHA, archery has deep roots in Bhutanese history and culture. It was officially declared the country's national sport in 1971, the same year Bhutan became a member of the United Nations. Today, traditional archery tournaments remain popular social events where competition, celebration, music, and community life come together. What surprises many visitors is the distance involved. In traditional Bhutanese archery, targets can be positioned roughly 145 meters apart. That is far longer than the 70-meter distance commonly used in modern Olympic archery. From the other end of the field, the wooden target can appear incredibly small, making an accurate hit seem almost impossible. But the arrows are only part of the spectacle. When a player hits or comes close to the target, teammates may celebrate with traditional songs and dances. Competitors can also exchange playful verbal distractions intended to break an opponent's concentration. The atmosphere can be loud, colorful, competitive, and deeply social. Modern equipment has also entered the sport. Alongside traditional bamboo bows, some Bhutanese archers now use advanced compound bows, creating another fascinating meeting point between ancient customs and modern technology. Archery also carries historical significance. For generations, bows and arrows were important tools for hunting and warfare in the Himalayan region. Over time, that practical tradition evolved into a sport strongly connected to national identity. For an outsider, a Bhutanese archery tournament may initially look chaotic compared with the quiet concentration of an Olympic event, but that is exactly what makes it special. A strange animal becomes a symbol of Bhutan. Deep in the forests and mountains of the eastern Himalayas lives one of the strangest-looking animals you may encounter in Bhutan, the takin. With a large head, thick neck, powerful body, and short curved horns, this unusual mammal has an appearance that is difficult to describe. To some observers, it seems to combine features of a goat and a cow. But the takin is a real and distinct species, and in Bhutan, it holds a particularly important place as the country's national animal. The Bhutan takin, a recognized subspecies, is adapted to life in rugged Himalayan environments. Takins can move through steep mountain terrain and migrate between different elevations as seasonal conditions and food availability change. Their diet includes grasses, leaves, shrubs, and other vegetation found across their habitat. But the most fascinating explanation for the takin's appearance comes not from zoology, but from Bhutanese legend. According to a famous traditional story, the Buddhist master Drukpa Kunli, better known as the Divine Madman, was once asked to perform a miracle. After eating meat from a goat and a cow, the story says he placed the goat's head onto the cow's bones and commanded the strange creature to come alive. The animal supposedly stood up and walked away, becoming the takin. Of course, this is a religious and cultural legend rather than a scientific account. Yet the story demonstrates how deeply wildlife, spirituality, and folklore can become connected in Bhutanese culture. Today, visitors hoping to see a takin near the capital can visit the Motithang Takin Preserve in Thimphu. The area has an unusual history of its own. According to the well-known local account, it developed from a former small zoo after animals released into the wild reportedly remained around the area instead of disappearing into the forest. The takin may not have the global fame of a tiger or the giant panda, but for Bhutan, it represents something uniquely local. An entire festival celebrates the return of rare cranes. Every year, as winter approaches, something extraordinary happens in Bhutan's beautiful Phobjikha Valley. Rare black-necked cranes arrive from their breeding grounds on the Tibetan Plateau and other high-altitude regions, turning this remote Himalayan valley into one of Bhutan's most remarkable wildlife destinations. For local communities, however, these birds are more than seasonal visitors. They are so deeply respected that Bhutan holds an annual festival in their honor. The Black-Necked Crane Festival is traditionally celebrated on November 11th at Gangte in the Phobjikha Valley. The event was created to raise awareness about the importance of protecting the cranes and preserving the fragile environment they depend on. One of the festival's most memorable sights is the crane dance. Local schoolchildren dress in crane-inspired costumes and imitate the birds' movements, transforming wildlife conservation into a colorful community celebration. Traditional songs, dances, and cultural performances bring residents and visitors together around a shared message. These rare birds are worth protecting. Black-necked cranes are among the world's most distinctive high-altitude cranes. Standing roughly 4 feet tall, they are immediately recognizable by their pale bodies, black necks, and dark tail feathers. Each winter, several hundred of these cranes can be recorded in Bhutan, with Phobjikha Valley serving as one of their best-known wintering areas in the country. Their arrival usually begins in the autumn, and many remain until the following spring before returning north toward their breeding grounds. The cranes also hold spiritual and cultural significance for many Bhutanese people. Near the valley stands the historic Gangte Monastery, and local stories have long connected the bird's seasonal arrival with the sacred landscape surrounding it. But behind the beauty is a serious conservation challenge. Wetland changes, habitat disturbance, and human development can threaten the environments these migratory birds rely on. Bhutan is trying to modernize without losing its identity. Perhaps the most surprising thing about Bhutan is not an unusual tradition, a rare animal, or a law protecting its forests. It is the extraordinary contrast between the country's ancient identity and its rapidly changing modern life. For centuries, Bhutan developed in relative geographic isolation among the mountains of the Himalayas. Television and internet services were officially introduced only in 1999, making Bhutan one of the last countries in the world to embrace television broadcasting. Since then, change has arrived quickly. Today, young Bhutanese people use smartphones, social media, online entertainment, and digital services just like millions of others around the world. In Thimphu, you can find modern cafes, restaurants, shops, nightlife, and a growing creative scene. Yet just a short distance away, monks continue centuries-old Buddhist traditions inside monasteries, while traditional dzongs still dominate the landscape. This contrast creates one of Bhutan's greatest challenges. The country must provide jobs and economic opportunities for a younger generation with increasingly global ambitions. Like many smaller nations, Bhutan has also faced concerns about young people leaving the country in search of education and better-paying opportunities abroad. At the same time, Bhutan is pursuing ambitious plans for its future. One of the most significant is the Gelephu Mindfulness City, a major development initiative in southern Bhutan envisioned as a new economic hub built around sustainability, innovation, and Bhutanese values. The scale of these ambitions shows that Bhutan does not intend to remain frozen in time. But modernization raises a difficult question. How much can a country change before it begins to lose the traditions that made it distinctive in the first place? That question can be seen everywhere in Bhutan. Traditional clothing beside modern fashion, ancient monasteries beside smartphones, and centuries-old customs existing alongside new ideas about business, technology, and global connectivity. Bhutan is more than a mysterious kingdom hidden in the Himalayas. It is a country where ancient traditions, nature, and modern ambitions exist side by side. As Bhutan moves toward the future, one question remains: can it continue to change without losing the identity that makes it so unique?